Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes, hosting a monster recruiting weekend over the next couple of days. Quite frankly, this is one of the more impressive visit lists that I've seen in this 2026 cycle. The hardest part about doing this episode was choosing what players that I wanted to highlight. We're talking 30 plus names, most of them blue chip talent in the 2026 cycle. Want to do two different things. One, let's talk about the names, or at least my favorite names that will be on campus for Miami. But I secondly, kind of want to have the conversation of where Mario Cristobal and this Miami Hurricanes program are going on the recruiting trail, where I think to a lot of y'all who follow this program pretty closely, specifically on the recruiting trail, I think it's pretty clear to me too. Mario Cristobal wants to sign an elite offensive line class in 2026. You look at the top targets, the names that Miami seems to be pushing their chips into the middle of the table for, it's these big bodies on the offensive line. And I'll say this, I love it because you look at this 2026 cycle, and there are a couple tackle prospects that are elite in 2026. Now it starts with Jackson Camwell, and I'll give Miami a ton of credit. I mean, 3 months ago, I wasn't even sure if Miami was going to be in it for Jackson Camwell. You fast forward to the end of March, they might be the leader in the clubhouse to land Jackson Campbell's commitment. Kenny Pepe, I think Miami's been the leader for the last couple of months. There are some elite tackle prospects in this 2026 cycle, and it is very clear that they are top priorities for Miami. We've seen Mario Cristobal do this. Go back to the 2023 cycle. Francis Maui-Noah, Samson Okunlola, it was very clear that Miami wanted to fill it up on the offensive line that did just that. Then in 2024, it's very clear they wanted to go on the defensive line. Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, Artavius Jones, Booker Pickett, Marquise Lightfoot. I'm probably leaving out some names, but it was an elite defensive line class of which we're very excited to see what those guys look like in year two. 2026 seems to be the year of the offensive line. I love it for a couple of different reasons. One, because the players, the tackle prospects are very, very good. But I think secondly, there's going to be some opportunity for some of these studs to get on the football field immediately in 2026. Francis Maui-Noah probably going to the NFL draft after this year. I sneaky think Markel Bell can play himself into an NFL draft pick as well. I don't normally bang the table for true freshmen to get on the football field year one at the offensive tackle position. I think guys like Jackson Cantwell and Kenny Pepe are players who are capable of doing it, and there might be an opportunity for them to do it in 2026 for Miami. And I think, secondly, ride the momentum. This is a program that has turned into a destination spot for offensive linemen. They are developing offensive linemen at a high level, putting them out into the NFL draft. It's what these guys are looking for. I want to get into some of these names before we do, and as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, appreciate you guys. It's really been fun talking this program. A lot of storylines coming out of spring practice. It's starting to get real on the recruiting trail. I got the commitment sweatshirt right next to me here. If we get a commitment over the weekend, we'll be talking about it. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The amount of continued support from the Miami Hurricane fan base has been amazing. Means the world to the boys. Without further ado, let's get into it. Kenny Pepe, probably the biggest name that will be on campus, a guy that I think Miami probably leads for. What I love about Kenny Pepe is he has all the things you can't teach. 6'7", 320. You take one look at this kid and say that's a first round offensive tackle. I think secondly, he's a phenomenal athlete. It's hard to find these guys who go 6'7", 320 who can get out of their stance and are light on their feet. Kenny Pepe has all the traits of being a all-American caliber dude at the collegiate level. It's rare that we sit back and say blue chip guy, especially at the offensive tackle position where it's really hard to evaluate. And sometimes guys just miss. I look at Kenny Pepe and say that this is a guy that I struggle to see missing in this 2026 cycle, and a guy that I think would have the opportunity to play early for Miami as a true freshman. Number 2 on the list, and this kid is maybe the most fascinating prospect in the 2026 cycle, Hakeem Kent. And I think I said that first name right. He's 6'5", he's 300 pounds. He plays tight end at the high school level. I've heard that he wants to play tight end at the collegiate level too. Look, this kid I think would be an elite offensive tackle. And I think that you probably take the commitment. Hey, you want to play tight end? We'll take you at tight end and we'll kind of figure out the rest later. We say this for a couple of guys, at 6'5", 300 pounds, he is a freaky, tremendous athlete. I mean, you see him out there running routes, getting in and out of his breaks, adjusting to football in the air. You don't see many 300-pound bodies move the way Ken does. If he wants to play, look, I think the ceiling is unquestionably higher at the offensive tackle position, at least from what I've seen. But if he wants to play tight end, I think there's some juice there. He'd be a hell of an inline blocker as a tight end as well. Take this kid, figure out the position later is probably my take on it, because you just don't see many bodies like Ken that move the way he does. Now, I got two more offensive line guys I want to talk about who will be on campus. Number 3 from the state of California, where it seems like Miami's turning up for a couple of California kids. We'll talk about a few more later on in this episode. Tommy Tofi. You turn on the film, he's 6'6", 320. He's a massive, massive human being. There's some tackle athleticism. Now, I understand why he projects better as a guard, because he is one of those guys that you look at and say, I just want to put him in a phone booth, let him get hands on opposing defensive linemen, and just road grade. He's a really good athlete in pass protection. This is a guy that you take and say, yeah, probably the highest ceiling is probably at guard. He could be a very, very good interior offensive lineman, but there is some tackle athleticism to this kid. And I love taking bodies on the offensive line that can play multiple different positions, because it allows you to get creative with how you want your offensive line to look. One of the things that I think is most important about building a strong offensive line is getting your best 5 players on the football field. It's a lot easier to get your best 5 players on the football field when you have guys that can play guard and tackle. And I think Tommy Tofi is one of those guys that, yes, will be a very good guard, but I also think could play tackle at the collegiate level too, because he is a very good athlete and has the frame, at 6'6" and long, to play at the offensive tackle spot. Last name I'll put it is Cannon Pickett. Not the ceiling that Kenny Pepe has, but a guy that is really polished up. Obviously, I think a layup, or not a layup, but a guy that Miami should land if they want to land him. Obviously, with the family connections to the program. What stands out about to me is it's not always flashy to talk about some of these 3-star prospects, but with Cannon Pickett, it's just, I feel like there's such a high floor. Like, I look at him and say, at some point, he's going to be a multi-year starter for a Power 4 program at that guard position. When you get the opportunity to land guys that, yeah, they might not have top 10 NFL drafts. I mean, I think one of the names that comes to mind, maybe like Inez Cooper, where it's like Inez Cooper's probably not going to be a top 50 NFL draft pick, but he's been so solid for Miami over the last couple of years that's kind of how I see Cannon Pickett's career going for whatever program he goes to. And when you have the opportunity, again, it's a hard position to evaluate. When you have the opportunity to grab guys that you feel confident are going to play and contribute at some point for your program on the offensive line, go out and take those guys. You already have Ben Cogden committed, a guy that I think Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal absolutely love. I would be looking for Miami to sign at least 3 or 4 blue chip guys on the offensive line. And we say this all the time, that's the position you want to take a lot of quality bodies in, because it's hard to address in the transfer portal. Look, if you miss on a wide receiver, okay, you can go get one in the transfer portal. It's hard to find starting caliber offensive linemen. And I think Mario Cristobal wants to sign a big class in 2026. Next name that is supposed to be on campus, and a guy that I think might be the number 1 overall target outside of Jackson Campbell and Kenny Pepe, and that's Derek Cooper. This kid's special at the running back position. And early on in the recruiting process, there were some question marks about where he would play. Would he be a running back? Would he be a back 7 defender, safety? He's clearly a running back to me. You take a look at the junior film. I think he's my favorite running back in this 2026 class. Now, you have Javian Mallory already locked in. That's a really solid running back prospect. You want to sign 2 guys. If there is one guy that I think Miami really wants to go out and get, it's Derek Cooper. Obviously, right in your backyard. special running back that I could see multi-years going for over 1,000 yards. What's so intriguing about Derek Cooper, he's a pretty dang big body. He's 6'1", 205, and he's put together for a kid that's going to be a junior. His short area quicks, his ability to make people miss and then go out and just outrun defensive backs for the home run, it's hard to find. And he's a little bit of a high-waisted guy, so you'd maybe assume that the contact balance wouldn't be all that great. It's good. I mean, he checks off just about every box that you want at the running back position. I'm a huge fan of Derek Cooper. It sounds like Miami is probably the leader in the clubhouse. Would love to see him running. And this is kind of the fun conversation. Hey, if we sign a really good offensive line class, guys like a Tommy Tofe or Jackson Campbell, Kenny Pepe, like guys that can move bodies off the line of scrimmage, then we go put Derek Cooper behind that offensive line for the next couple of years. That's how you want it to look if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan over the next couple of years. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, this is a really intriguing conversation, at least for me. There's just not that many quality interior defensive line prospects. Last year there were, and 2 years ago when Miami signed a bunch of them, Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, there were a lot of good bodies. This year there's just not. It's a class where it's hard to find a lot of blue chip bodies in the middle of the defensive line. Well, Miami's in it for a couple. I'll start with my favorite one, Tom. He just decommitted from Oregon. It sounds like USC's the leader in the clubhouse, and I think Tom's going to be on campus. It's always kind of tough to tell with these Cali kids if they actually make it or not. To me, he's my favorite interior defensive lineman in this 2026 cycle. You're probably on the outside looking in, but these are and you just had him on campus a couple of weeks ago, and it sounded like that went really well. He's setting up visits in the summer. Turn it up for this kid. Again, because there's not that many bodies like this who at 6'3", 320, he can do the dirty work. He can two gap, take on double teams, but he's also such a good athlete in terms of penetrating, giving you juice in the pass rush. It's hard to find defensive linemen that can do the dirty work, but also give you elite playmaking ability, game wrecking ability. Tom to me is one of those guys. And the other name is Vodney Cleveland from Birmingham, Alabama. Powerful hands, 6'3", 305, plays with really good leverage. Probably not as much of a game wrecker as I think Tom might be able to be. But this is another one of those, hey, there's just not that many of these guys in this 2026 class. If you can go out and get two of them, you feel pretty good about where your defensive line sits for the next couple of years. Now, the last name I'll talk about is Jake Cruel, who's probably one of, if not my favorite edge rusher in this 2026 cycle. He's one of those guys that a lot of these edge rushers coming out of high school, they'll just make your jaw drop when they walk into a room. Like, holy smokes, how is this kid 16, 17 years old? Looks like 24-year-old grown man. Jay Cruel's not going to walk into a room and make your jaw drop. You turn on the film from IMG Academy his junior year. This is really powerful in the hands, but a guy that is a technician as well. Like, I think he's got really good physical traits, even though he might not look it. But, man, does he know what he's doing as an edge rusher. That's hard to find. Jay Cruel is going to be a guy that I think produces for multiple years at whatever program he goes to. Would love to see Miami add him in this 2026 cycle. I'm a Michigan fan. Jay Cruel's also considered Michigan. Would love him to come up to Ann Arbor too. Miami's seemingly picking up a lot of momentum with some of these IMG Academy kids. If you had to choose two, it'd be Kenny Pepe and Jay Cruel. Now, you look at Miami in 2026, and I'm a fan of the class. Now, you have 6 commitments, 3 of which are blue chip, but the other 3 are guys that I know Miami loves. Darion Coleman, if I were to bet on him, he's going to finish as a top 100 prospect. And one, you just take a look at not only the junior year film, but some of the offseason stuff. I think he's kind of slept on in this recruiting cycle because he doesn't have that prototypical 6'4", 220 frame. He's 6'1", 170, kind of a slight frame. He rips it. The arm is live. It's one of the more live arms that you see in 2026. Throws off platform really well. He's continuing to dominate some of these off-season camps that he goes to. Every off-season camp that he participates, he's like the guy that's standing out. I think once people get over, and to Miami fans, I don't think y'all give a darn. Yeah, list him as a 3-star for all that we care. We love him. And I think rightfully so. I think once people get over the fact that, yeah, he's going to be a little bit of a shorter quarterback, this kid has everything that you were looking for: playmaking ability, live arm. Then you look at Ben Cogden, a guy that maybe not the best offensive lineman right now, but could be a very good offensive lineman down the road, kind of a developmental prospect. Even the non-blue chippers, you'll say, in 2026 class, I think Miami really likes. We'll see how it turns out for Miami in 2026. There is a long way to go from here until signing day. Miami's doing a lot of work getting these guys on the campus. Going to be fun the next couple of weeks. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.